people we serve live their best lives in Shropshire. Amen. Lots of chatter. Can we be quiet and listen in for a minute, please? Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the council. For the benefit of those who are vulnerable or otherwise anxious about becoming ill, we ask that you continue to respect the decision for those who wish to still wear face masks. If you're wearing a mask, please do remove it while you're speaking. Please do not hold the microphone by the stem. They are very expensive to repair. For the benefit of those watching live stream, please use your microphone every time you speak, including when you participate in a recorded vote. You may find it easier to be seated whilst using your microphone. I do propose to take a 20-minute break, if needed, at 12:30 to allow those that may wish to use the facilities and take refreshment to do so. Also, my pet hate, we didn't get it this time, but please, phones on silent, computers on silent. If you're not sure how to do it, get your neighbour to. There is nothing more irritating than listening to BBC News and computers binging and bonging and making a dearth of different noises. That would be much appreciated and is respectful to your colleagues. Thank you. So we will move on to item 1, which are the apologies. The Chief Executive to read the apologies.
Apologies have been received from the following councillors: Paul Gill, Elliot Lynch, David Minery, Vivian Parry, Robert Tyndall, Kevin Turley, Alex Wagner, Mark Williams. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Sorry. All right. Have you got your microphone on? Well, that's all right. We just covered that bit.
Sorry, Chair, Alan Mosley. Never mind. We all missed something.
Alan Mosley. Yes. All right. It's only so that people who are watching in from home can actually hear.
John Price wants to give his apology. He's got a dental appointment.
Okay, and I also understand that Steve Davenport, if he's not here already, may be 10 or 15 minutes late, but is on his way.
Also, did Kevin Turley get mentioned? Because he wishes he did.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? I'm surprised there's any of us here by that list. Right. Item 2 is disclosable interests. I would like to remind members to disclose any pecuniary or other registrable or non-registrable interest in any matter to be discussed, including the interest in their register of interests, and leave the chamber prior to the matter being discussed. Can't see any hands. Item 3 then, we will move on to the minutes of the last meeting, which doesn't really seem like that long ago. I'd like to move the minutes of the previous council meeting held on the 2nd of March 2023 as circulated with the agenda papers be signed as a correct record.
I second those minutes.
Julian Dean, Councillor Dean.
Thank you very much. Page 11, it suggests that Councillor Vasma accepted an amendment to my motion, which would have been lovely, but it was actually me who accepted that amendment. So that's just an alteration on page 11. It's about the second.
No, can you speak into the microphone? I'm struggling to hear you here. So.
Oh, okay. So, beg your pardon, it is on. Page 11, it suggests that Councillor Vasma indicated that he would accept an amendment to a motion which I proposed. It was actually me who accepted the amendment.
Okay. Okay, taking that on board then, is everybody content with those? Please show. All those in favour? Good. Anybody against? Any abstentions if you weren't here? Tracy Huffer. Thank you. Okay, so we will move on to item 4, which are the announcements. To receive such communications as the Chair and Vice Chair and Head of Paid Service may desire to lay before you. I think those have been emailed out. I refer those to the list of official engagements. Okay, we'll move on to item 5, which are the public questions, and in accordance with Procedure Rule 14, we'll now deal with questions from members of the public. In accordance with the revised procedure rules, the Assistant Director of Legal and Democratic Services will read out the public questions received from members of the public who are not present. The relevant portfolio holder will respond to the questions. We've had 6 received, and the first one is from Mike Streetley. Tim.
Thank you, Chairman. His question is this: In response to my question to Shropshire Council regarding the budget for the North West Relief Road on the 2nd of March 2023, Councillor Marshall stated that the spend to date post-outline business case OBC was 16.5 million and that figure was within the currently agreed spending profile for the project. I note that post-funding report to Council on the 16th of May 2019 stated that the maximum spend on the North West Relief Road project up to that point at which final DFT approval was received would be £15 million. The report also states that the Council received £942,875 from the LLM in 2016 to fund the OBC, suggesting a total budget, including OBC, of approximately £16 million. I also note that in August 2022, the Council stated that the total spend at that point was £18.1 million, with a further £2.3 million to be spent. To clarify, this could the Council please say what the total spend on the combined North West Relief Road project, including the OBC, is to date, and what it anticipates the total spend being if it progresses to the point at which it is ready for approval by DFT.
Okay, and we are having a response from Councillor Richard Marshall, the portfolio holder for Highways and Regulatory Services.
Thank you, Chair. The current spend to date on the North West Relief Road, including the Marches Let funded Oxon Link Road, post OBC is 22.3 million, which is within the cost profile agreed for the project with the DFT and the Marches Let. The OBC was funded separately by DFT prior to programme entry at 942,875. The current expenditure forecast to DFT approval of the full business case is circa 23.3 million, which is also within the agreed project cost forecast with funders and the council.
Thank you. The next question is from John Lill. Again, Tim, please.
The question is this. Launching the IPCC synthesis report last week, the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, said, "This report is a clarion call to massively fast-track climate efforts by every country and every sector on every time frame. Our world needs climate action on all fronts, everything, everywhere, all at once." Does Shropshire Council share this sense of urgency regarding the climate emergency? And, in light of this, does the Council plan to work to restrict or prevent developments that result in an increase in greenhouse gases wherever it can?
Thank you. This response will be from Councillor Ian Nellins, who is the portfolio holder for Climate Change, Environment and Transport.
Thank you very much for the question. Shropshire Council does share a sense of urgency regarding the climate emergency. The draft local plan currently at examination reflects and responds to the climate emergency and needs to transition to a zero carbon economy. The draft local plan seeks to do this by a number of means, including planning developments in areas which reduces the need for people to travel and maximises their ability to make trips by sustainable means of transport, integrating or supporting on and off-site delivery of renewable and low-carbon energy, maximising carbon sequestration and adapting the impacts of climate change. One specific example the Council are proposing through policy is to require, where one or more new dwellings are created, that 10% of the predicted energy needs of that development are met from on-site renewable and low-carbon energy sources. The Council must, of course, ensure that proposals for enhancing delivery of housing remains viable and consistent within the National Planning Policy Framework. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next question is from Dr. Natasha Harlow. Again, Tim, please.
Shropshire Council prides itself on being one of the more forward-thinking councils in the UK, putting climate considerations at the heart of governance. This awareness needs to include every aspect of council activities, including the provision of food. I believe Shropshire is well placed to show leadership by setting an example to the wider community regarding awareness of the climate impact of the food we eat. Other councils, for example, Oxfordshire, Cambridge City and Exeter City, have committed to serve only plant-based food at their internal events. Therefore, given the climate emergency and our stated aim to reduce emissions, will Shropshire Council commit to serving fully plant-based fare at all future internal events that are catered, as other councils have done? Even if this only applies to refreshments at a very small number of events per year, it will be a small step that sends a powerful message. This is the logical and necessary step after having declared a climate emergency. It will help normalise plant-based eating, which, according to an Oxford University study, is the single most effective thing an individual can do to reduce their environmental impact. We are currently in a cost of living crisis. Meat and dairy products are almost always the most expensive part of a meal. Whole food, plant-based meals made with real ingredients are considerably cheaper. By doing the right thing for the planet and promoting eating for good health, the council can also encourage residents to save money on food.
The response will be from Councillor Dean Carroll, who's the portfolio holder for Growth, Regeneration and Housing.
Thank you, Chair. Shropshire Council considers that it is important to support the local food and drink producers, which are so vital to the Shropshire economy. Locally produced food, whether of animal or vegetable origin, has numerous benefits to the local economy and the environment, as it's a significant reduction in terms of food miles and the carbon footprint, as opposed to imported foodstuffs. It is also important to consider the freedom of choice of individuals to make their own dietary choices, and it is not for Shropshire Council to enforce those choices, but to make sure that all dietary preferences are catered for.
And the next question is from Dr. Jamie Russell. Tim.
There are currently 5,452 comments on the North West Road planning application, with 5,219 objections and 218 in support. I believe this is a new record for public comments on a Shropshire planning application. Objections have been received from 4 local town councils, including Shrewsbury, which the road will supposedly benefit, 8 county businesses, 10 transport campaign groups and 8 environmental campaign groups. With this in mind, I would like to ask, 1, does the administration agree with the portfolio holder for highways when he says that the objections from the public, multiple Shropshire Town Councils, national bodies like Cycling UK and the Woodland Trust, and statutory bodies like the Environment Agency are just the reaction of a vocal minority? 2, given the level of concern over the plans, which have been through several major revisions since 2019, will the council commit to a new round of public consultation before the application is submitted to planning? Thank you.
And the responses to be given by Councillor Richard Marshall, again the portfolio holder for Highways and Regulatory Services. Richard.
Thank you. The comments on social media posted by myself of vocal minority was a question in response to a tweet stating the number of objections against the number for the North West Relief Road on the planning portal. It was clearly a question, as the words vocal minority were followed by 2 question marks. To put that into context, currently 6.2% of the population of Shrewsbury, or 1.4% of the population of Shropshire, have posted objections onto the portal. With such low percentages, I believe it is fair to question whether this is a vocal minority. I have spoken with many people in favour of the North West Relief Road, but due to the sometimes toxic nature of social media, they are afraid to openly support the Relief Road. I can confirm that this application will be treated as all other planning applications and will be decided as per current legislation.
Thank you. And now a question from Rita Makin. Again, Tim.
In recent years, there seems to be an increase in dog fouling on pavements, grass verges, and public places around Shrewsbury. It is an offence to not pick up after your dog. So please, can you tell me how many fines have been issued in the last 3 years?
And once again, the response is from Councillor Richard Marshall. I won't say it's portfolio holder again. It hasn't changed since I said it a few minutes ago. Richard.
Thank you, Chair. The council does understand the nuisance caused by inconsiderate dog owners in not cleaning up after their pets. We are currently working internally on a suite of new measures that cover many of these issues. Our focus recently has been on stray dogs, which I am delighted to say the announcement of our preferred supplier of this service will be announced very shortly. To prosecute for dog fouling is an extremely complex issue, which relies on catching the offender in the act. So unfortunately, we have had no successful prosecutions in the past 3 years. As a portfolio holder for regulatory services, I feel this is not acceptable as it still continues, and I am therefore working with officers to formulate a strategy that will involve education, prevention, and then ultimately prosecution. I'd like to reassure the residents of Shropshire this is very high on my list of priorities.
Thank you. Now we have a question from Debbie Jeezy on behalf of the residents of Underdale. I believe is here.
Firstly, I'd like to thank you for inviting us today to speak to you all. On the 28th of September 2022, Shropshire Council gave notice that prior approval was not required for the erection of a 16-metre 5G telecom mast on Robertson Way, Shrewsbury, directly overlooking homes in Eden Close and Oswell Road in Underdale, Shrewsbury. What other sites were considered but discounted? Could you detail the distance from residential properties and any analysis showing the current location as the most appropriate site for a 16-metre mast? Do you think it's appropriate to have a 16-metre mast so close to people's homes? Was the impact of this mast on residents' mental health, well-being and the value of their properties considered? Did Shropshire Council benefit directly or indirectly from its decision on the 28th of September? Why were the residents not consulted, since this is clearly in breach of the Code of Practice for Wireless Network Development? In the Council's Development Management Report on this mast, Section 8.2, Human Rights, states that Article 8 gives the right to respect for private and family life, and First Protocol Article 1 allows for the peaceful enjoyment of possessions. How is a 16-metre mast so close to homes providing peaceful enjoyment of possessions? In the same report, Section 8.2 states that First Protocol Article 1 requires that the desires of landowners must be balanced against the impact on residents. Will the Council apologise for its failure to properly consider the impact on residents and mitigate its mistake by getting CK Hutchinson Networks UK Limited to remove the mast to a more suitable location? And I'd also like to invite anybody here today to come to our gardens to look at the mast, how it towers over our gardens, and look us in the eye and say that this is a suitable location for the mast. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and again, I invite Councillor Richard Marshall to give an answer. Richard.
Thank you. The applicant indicated that 8 sites were considered. The reasons why these were not suitable were in the prior notification document. The site was considered by officers in relation to current planning guidance. This application had to be assessed under a prior approval procedure. This legislation only allows the local planning authority to consider the likely impacts in relation to siting and appearance. It cannot consider property prices. The applicant is recommended to carry out a pre-development consultation. It is understood they consulted with the local school and Shrewsbury Town Council. When the prior notification was received, the council informed both the local member and the town council. Now, neither the town council nor the local member lodged any objections to the scheme. It is considered that the proposal will have no detrimental impacts on residents' human rights and complies with recognised industry regulations to mobile masts and health concerns. Telecoms companies under the New Roads and Streets Act 1991 have the right to carry out street works without prior consent of the Highways Authority. The application was by a separate operator, and I can confirm the local planning authority would not benefit in any way. With digital connectivity, it is a difficult balance to provide that much called for connectivity and find suitable locations for the necessary equipment. A combination of the need for digital connectivity and no objections from the town council or indeed the local member weighed heavily in the planning balance to approve the notification.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes the public questions. We will move on to item 6, which is the ICT digital strategy. I invite Councillor Rob Gittins, the portfolio holder for Culture and Digital, to present the report, move the report, and recommendations be received and agreed. Gittins.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman. The ICT and digital strategy takes note of the advantages in technology in recent years that have transformed how organisations in both the private and public sector operate and deliver better services while also reducing their costs. The ICT and digital strategy underpins our Shropshire plan and links and runs through the themes of the plan of healthy people, healthy environment, healthy economy and healthy organisation. Our headline priorities support a vision of a digital county. They are to safeguard and protect, to digitise and automate, and to enable and de-develop. And using those themes of the Shropshire plan, let's take a look at a few examples. So for healthy people, this will mean the Internet of Things, or otherwise known as smart homes, to maintain independence, online consultations leading to more personalised care. The healthy environment, a adoption of cloud services reduces energy use, reduced travel and reduced paper. For the healthy economy, as a council, we continue to invest heavily in improved connectivity and supporting digital startups, as well as digitally skilled workers. In regards to the healthy organisation, this will mean further adoption of good IT service delivery standards and digital end-to-end services, which will save both time and money to free up the council to for its other objectives. The technical process is predicted to continue for many years to come, and the ICT and digital strategy will support Shropshire Council in ensuring that both local residents and visitors to the county enjoy the benefits of the digital age, while those in digital poverty are not left behind. So therefore, could I ask Council to adopt the ICT and digital strategy as stated in recommendation 3.1 in this council report? Thank you.
Thank you. I understand this is being seconded by Councillor Dan Thomas. Is that correct?
Yep.
Right. Okay. Now, we have had an amendment tabled to this. Heather?
You have. And it's not that I'm anti the whole process. I'm actually very supportive of all of that. And having just had a major incident for the 3rd time, every time I come into Shirehall, my ICT loses its Wi-Fi. I've had to lead several meetings because with updates and so on, I've got everything. I reboot my computer, I lose it. So if we look at the amendment, which was on my computer.
So you've lost it.
Yeah.
We need it.
I would like it because I could refer to it rather because it was on screen. I hope this makes you understand why it is we need some safeguards around the strategy in general. And what I'm looking for is a welfare policy so that actually those people who find it really difficult to access anything digitally, and we have a large number, and the report does refer to that. It refers to the 3,000 you're going to try and get online. It also talks about Shropshire actually being lower than the national average in smartphone ownership and so on. But actually, in the very rural areas, we have a significant problem with access to any of this. And increasingly, I, as an elected member, because there is no access to other people, are having to give access through my own computer to members of the public. And I mean, just the other day, in fact, it was on Monday, I was trying to get someone their £200 because they've been off grid. They haven't been able to get it. They have no smartphone. They don't have mobile phone signal because they live in a caravan on a farm and therefore they have an indirect electricity supply. And then our ICT blocked the government website. And it took 15 to 20 minutes actually to get through for the ICT department, who are really good, really good, to put a patch on it so that other people will be able to access it. So there are issues around all of this. And when I've been involved in anything where we have older, vulnerable people who have lost their landlines, for instance, and can't even phone, on numerous occasions, it's because they can't use a smartphone. They either don't have one or they can't use one. So what I'm trying to do here is make sure that the council is fully aware of the issues involved for many people, certainly in their 80s and 90s. And we have a whole policy around it so that we make sure that when we're doing all of this, that we take those people into consideration. And just to give you a recent example, a 90-year-old on terminal care lost her landline, which was her lifeline. She was having end-of-life carers coming in. They couldn't contact her because she had got a smartphone, couldn't use it. But the mobile phone signal there was so poor that actually, even when people would, neighbours were coming in, they were having great difficulty. So that is the essence of the amendment, which you can see in front of you. And the last bit, which talks about emergency access and systems fail, I do think we need to look at that because, as you see, when systems fail, it can actually, it's not life-threatening in my case, because I can't read it off screen, but it can be life-threatening for somebody on end-of-life care, for somebody with severe learning difficulties who's got all sorts of other issues. So that's the essence of this. It's meant to be very constructive, but I actually would really like the council to be able to support those people who, for no fault of their own, because of learning difficulties, because of age, because of a number of different things, will actually have some sort of plan put in place. Might I also add that BT are now, and still are, removing copper landlines to people's homes as we speak. And when that happens, there are a whole raft of people as well who will even lose the ability to be able to phone us at the council. So I think we need to look at that as well as everything else. So this is really about the vulnerable across Shropshire, not just South West Shropshire, it's a vulnerable across the whole of Shropshire. Thank you.
Thank you. And I understand that's being seconded by Councillor Ruth Houghton.
I'll second that, Chair, please, and reserve my right.
Okay. Julia, Councillor Julia Buckley.
Thank you. I support the amendment, and I too am concerned about our more vulnerable residents. All of the digitisation programme needs to retain that minimal provision for those who do not or cannot access digital services. Within the report itself, in page 14 of the Appendix A, it does specify that there are approximately 17,000 older people in Shropshire who we know have no access to digital services. So they are what is described as digital poverty, and we need to ensure that adequate provision is made for them. Just like Heather, I'm sure all of us have stories where we've had to help elderly people using our computers to access and apply for blue badges or apply for grants. Just this morning, I've had to phone and make an appointment for somebody at the doctor's because they've not got a smartphone and they can't manage all the buttons. I'm sure all of us do that as part of our representative role, and we need to ensure that we look after these most vulnerable residents. I'd also like to take the opportunity to say that the implementation of this digitisation programme is causing a lot of concern amongst residents. So the current live consultation on reducing the telephone lines is taking away the opportunity to use traditional methods at the same time that you're bringing forward digital means. If I can just quote your own report at point 7.7, it says digital exclusion, ensuring that citizens are not excluded or left behind. An important part of our approach is that traditional methods are not precluded as a potential delivery channel, ensuring that there are always non-digital means for citizens to interact with the council. How can you say there are always non-digital means when you want to close the telephone lines on Saturdays and you want to reduce the telephone lines in the working week down to a few hours a day? How can somebody who works between 9 and 5, how can they contact this council? How can an elderly person contact this council if they can't do so by phone? So the theory is all very well, but we must be conscious of how we implement that. And I ask you to consider the two things together. I support the amendment, and with the amendment, we could then support the motion. Thank you.
Right, looking around the room. So, the hands. I'm going to go back. Oh, hey, you were lucky. You just slipped in under the fence there.
Well, that's good. We've heard two eloquent speakers there on these issues that have just come up. I have to say, I just want to say I concur with all that. The issue of rurality is massive. And I was talking only the other day in my particular patch with Peter to someone who's got his wife who's bedridden, has lots of care coming out, 2 carers in a car, all that sort of stuff. Fears the withdrawal of their copper cable line. I think the argument has been summed up by our previous two speakers. I think this is an event worthy of supporting.
Okay, I'm going to go back to you then, Councillor Houghton. You reserved your line. Anything you wish to say?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I really do support the digital strategy, but it is critical that we support those who are most vulnerable, not necessarily always in rural areas, but there are rural areas across the county where there is no access or very unreliable access to internet access. I don't know if any of you have ever tried to contact British Gas on behalf of a resident regarding fuel cards or charging up an electric card, but you can only do that by text. And there have to be alternative arrangements for those people who struggle to do that. So I fully support this amended recommendation that's put forward by Councillor Kidd.
Thank you. Councillor Gittins, is there anything you wish to say to the amendment?
Yes, thank you very much there, Chair. And sort of firstly, well, thank you very much for actually bringing a amendment forward. And although I do agree with some elements of what it says in the amendment, unfortunately it lacks the necessary detail for us to actually accept it. Now, of course, as well, the amendment has come in rather last minute. I would have been more than happy to work with you both over the last week or so, even to put forward an appropriate amendment that we could have both worked on together. But as it's come in last minute, I've had very little time to really take it on board and consult the necessary officers. But just sort of bringing up some of the points that have been mentioned. Whilst we are enhancing our digital offerings, we are not removing the normal ways, basically, of communicating with the council. Our digital approach is to create a compelling digital services that citizens actively choose to use, and pursuing many transactions as possible through digital routes. An important part of our approach is the normal method via the phone lines, and not precluded as a potential delivery channel. and we do accept that some individuals will be best served in the normal manner. In regards to areas with limited and no internet connectivity, the council is investing heavily by increasing the broadband voucher scheme. It's increasing this from £4,500 to £7,000 per property. And as such, there are also other projects coming forward, such as Project Gigabit and low orbiting satellites. Whilst we can't unfortunately accept the amendment, I would be happy to work with you in future on other amendments if you can come to me and talk to me a little bit quicker. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, we will move to a vote then on whether we accept the amendment or not. All those in favour, please show if you're in favour of the amendment as put. And those against, please show. So that is 25 for and 36 against. Therefore, the motion has not been successful. So we'll move back to the original strategy. Roger, you may speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Disappointed the amendment wasn't accepted, but I do note the maybe helpful words, but we will wait and see how it develops. But as I say, I think the amendment would have been good to adopt, but I do note, for example, and I note the words that were used on page 32 in the report. It says some processes in Shropshire Council are now fully digitalised, such as paying a parking fine. If you're not on digital, how do you pay a parking fine? And using that sort of statement in here does not help us out in the wider area to say that council is working with the older residents. And as you can see, the numbers are increasing in a chart later on in this report, as well as was referred to by Councillor Buckley, the number of over 65s to 75s who do not have internet access, do not have smartphones. So to see this sort of sentence there fills me with concern. I do note the word from the portfolio holder, and I also note in the report that there is a reference there on page 33 about this area is of such importance that it is a subject of a separate strategy now in preparation. Can we be told and assured that it will be addressed, discussions will take place, and concerning this strategy, can we have more details of when we may be aware of it? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I've got Councillors Tom Biggins and then Julia Evans. Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is a digital world, but not for everybody. And this report talks about digital poverty, but I have actually got a paper here, 2016, which actually describes as digital exclusion. I just really want to question some of the figures in the papers. In my 2016 Shropshire paper, it says it's estimated that roughly 89% of UK public services are now run online. And if we jump to page 35 of the paper here, it says local usage is estimated as 89.9%. So in that 5-year period, digital usage, and it's all estimation, seems to have gone up by 0.9%. So there are a lot of people who are digitally excluded. I've listened very intently to what was said in the speeches to the amendment, and I did find them very interesting. There's one thing I would specifically like to ask, and I did notice the portfolio holder, and I'm not trying to put him on the spot at all, did say that we were not removing normal ways of applying for different bits and pieces. But there are, according to the papers, 17,000 people over 75. And there must be an awful lot of people as well over 65 who fall into this category that actually require a blue badge. And the only way you can apply for a blue badge is actually on the internet. So what I would just like to do is suggest that the relevant portfolio holder actually has a look at this with a view to actually improving the situation, so that we can go back to an old-fashioned paper application. Because I know personally there are loads of people in Whitchurch that have immense difficulty actually applying, and most of them just don't bother in the end. So it's a very it's just a tentative request that this is looked at. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Julia Evans.
Yeah, mine was more to say about the climate change side of this. People working from home has not been fully proven. There's some of the reports that I've been reading that this is not a fully proven thing, and we have to consider that staff walk or cycle to work. They use electric cars, and I feel that if their homes aren't fully insulated, or they have air source heat pumps or solar panels, that we are just transferring the carbon emissions from the corporate to the private. And this isn't a carbon reduction, it's actually a carbon transfer. And I was just wondering, will there be any analysis of this? And the other thing to note, and I've had correspondence from Councillor Gittins on this with thanks, but I found that a few of the residents in my constituency weren't getting full fibre. They have now, but it was because they were on unadopted roads. And I just wondered if there was any, has this been looked at in full, and has anybody not had full fibre because they're on an unadopted road? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I haven't got anybody else on the list, so I'm going to go back to Dan Thomas, who seconded and reserved. All right, sorry, Ruth, I didn't see your hand.
Thank you,
After
Chair.
you, I will go back to him.
Thank you, Chair. Just a very quick question on this. I don't at all disagree with the strategy. I think it is a move forward. I just need people to be protected who are vulnerable. But there isn't any equality impact assessment attached to this report, and I do think that perhaps there should be consideration given to doing one and completing one, given that there are protected groups in here who will be affected by it, i.e. those who are older.
Okay, thank you. Turn yourself off, so to speak. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, it's my pleasure to second this motion today. The strategy aims to transform how the council operates, delivers services and reduce costs while promoting a vision of a digital county, as well as supporting the Shropshire plan. The headline priorities of being a digitally inclusive county include digitising and automating the things that can and should be digitally enabled, but keeping the things that shouldn't. The second priority is to enable and develop so technology is accessible to more people in our county in a way that improves their lives. And finally, the third priority is safeguarding against continually escalating cyber threats. I believe these are important, worthy aims, all essential as we aim for a more digitally inclusive county. In particular, this policy focuses on residents being able to self-serve, whether this is reporting a missed bin collection or using things Fix My Street. As a councillor who works full-time as a HR manager with a young family, Fix My Street has meant residents can contact the council directly, meaning I can focus my time on delivering things that matter to my residents instead of being someone who simply passes information to officers. The customer services phone system is good, but self-serving is better and can be accessed 24/7. It also frees up the phone lines for people who need them, as more people can self-serve, and it's better for the council as a corporate body. As a local member for Much Wenlock, I've seen firsthand how technology has improved people's lives, particularly the super fast broadband, which has been a lifeline for home workers and people during the pandemic. With Shropshire standing at 98.5% coverage for super fast broadband, this is exceptional. But I take the points and praise the work of Airband, who has reached the areas where fibre hasn't reached yet. Much Wenlock also is a thriving volunteer group called the Much Wenlock Clickers, who've done a lot to get people online, and strategies like this help to support that. The Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport predicts a golden age for technology in the UK. Shropshire is well placed to enjoy its place in the sun, provided the council plans its technology investments carefully, drives project delivery through to benefits, and ensures that the population is encouraged, equipped, skilled and connected to enjoy the bounties of the digital age. Supporting this strategy is the first step towards this, while ensuring those in digital poverty are not left behind. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gittins.
Thank you,
Come back to you to answer questions and sum up.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Thank you everyone for all of your questions. I will just go back to start off by going back to Councillor Kidd's question actually around you mentioned about Openreach starting to remove these copper landlines. Openreach aren't allowed just to remove copper and not replace it with anything whatsoever. They have to replace, by law, they have to replace the service. Okay. If you find that's not happening, then I need to know about it. So please do let me know. And just in general, when it comes to digital exclusion or digital poverty will always be there for the people of Shropshire. Councillor Buckley, you made some comments around the opening hours of our customer service centre. All of this has been based on data received. So a lot of data suggests that basically barely anyone ever phones us on a Saturday morning. So it's not a good use of council resources to be open on a morning when barely anyone ever phones us. So what we're looking to do with that is basically to have our call centres open when those people really need us. Councillor Evans, you mentioned about sort of paying parking fines. Yes, people can pay their parking fines, for example, online, but they can also go to Shropshire Local. They can also phone customer services. They can also get advice from our libraries as well. So there are numerous different ways, but I'm happy to work with the relevant portfolio holder to make that process even easier for people. Councillor Evans, you also mentioned about another strategy coming forward. This will be known as the digital county work. This will be coming along very soon, and we'll go through the usual routes of a green paper through scrutiny onto cabinet before being ratified here at council. Councillor Biggins, yes, you mentioned about digital exclusion, and again, residents, they can visit Shropshire Local, and they can go to the libraries as well as phoning up our customer services centre. Councillor Julia Evans, more than happy to look at a carbon transfer analysis. I have to admit I'd never even heard of one of those, but it sounds good, so quite happy to look into that. And in regards to the lack of an equalities impact assessment from Councillor Houghton, no, there wasn't one done, but in future there will be. Thank you.
Sorry, John, just pop your microphone off. Okay, there we have it. We've dealt with the amendment. We are on the original strategy. All those in favour of accepting it and the recommendations be received and agreed, please show. Okay, that's obviously a clear majority, but we will say give people the opportunity to put their hand up for a bit of exercise. Any against? Any abstentions? Okay, good. Okay, that's passed. We will move on then to item 7. Actually, I think really is probably just housekeeping, but I'm not going to take Councillor Gittins' thunder away. Under the Local Government Act of 1972, section 101, formal application to add bridleways in the parish of Clavely and the parish of Bobbington in Staffordshire, delegation to Staffordshire County Council to investigate and determine the cross-border claim. I invite Councillor Rob Gittins, the portfolio holder for culture and digital, to present the report, move the report and recommendations be received and agreed. Councillor Gittins.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, you certainly made that sound like a bit of a mouthful. Claims have been made to add a public bridleway that crosses the border between Shropshire and Staffordshire. We are therefore required to give authority for Staffordshire County Council to undertake the investigation and determination of this cross-border route within the parish of Clavely and the parish of Bobbington in Staffordshire. There aren't really any financial implications for the council, although we may be asked to contribute to some advertising costs. So yes, very much housekeeping. So if I could just ask the council to approve the recommendation as set out in section 3 of the council paper. Thank you.
Thank you. Relatively straightforward. I understand this is being seconded by Councillor Richard Marshall. Is that correct?
Yes, I'll second and reserve my right, please, Chair.
Okay, Julia.
Can I ask whether there are any objections or comments from the local member?
Sorry? Not aware of any. There you go. Is that it? Right. All right. Well, Richard, do you want to sum up everything you've heard?
I don't think really I can add too much to all of that debate.
You're content for me to go back to the portfolio holder then, so that he can sum up what he's heard.
Just move to the vote.
Okay. All those in favour, please show. Okay, clearly unanimous. Any against? Any abstentions? Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. We will move on to item 8, which I'm sure is going to go the same way. The scrutiny improvement plan. I'm going to invite Councillor Leslie Picton, the leader in portfolio for policy and strategy improvement and communications, to present the report, move the report and recommendations be received and agreed. Leslie.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much. Members will be aware that for some time now we've been talking about making some changes and making improvements to our scrutiny function. In September of last year, I'm sure I don't need to remind you, we had a scrutiny review undertaken. There was various recommendations that have come from that. The reason for the report being here today is that one of the recommendations, and there are many, but many of them will be dealt with as a matter of process rather than as a matter for the council to decide. The reason for the report coming here today is that we currently have 5 scrutiny committees. The recommendation from the review was that we move to 4, which not only aligns them with the Shropshire Plan, but also aligns them with our directorate. There have been a number of discussions taken place. I think I would like to place on record my thanks to Tom Dodds, because he's done a significant amount of work on this. I think he's visited all of your groups, or at least I certainly know he's visited at least 3 of them. And I think the recommendations have been generally welcomed. I do understand that there is an amendment, but I would like to propose that we go with the report as is read, and that we move from 5 to 4 scrutiny committees ready for the May Council, so that members can be elected to those those committees. Sorry. Thank you very much indeed.
Good. I understand that Councillor Richard Marshall is seconding that. Is that correct? Sorry, Ian.
Sorry, Councillor Ian Ellens.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can't read properly. Okay, now Heather has indicated, but Heather, what I'm going to do is take the amendment first, like I did before, and then bring you in. You can say your piece during the amendment. So there is a tabled amendment from Councillor Julian Dean. which is seconded by whom? It's very important to get a second.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, good.
Thank you. I mean, first of all, just to make the point, to save making the point later on when we listen to the reports from the scrutiny committees, that we really do need to do something about it. I've just looked through all the reports, and two of the reports contain the word recommendation, but we don't actually find out what happened to those recommendations. All the other reports contain words that the verbs are things like we heard, we learned, we endorsed, we noted, we were assured, we were reassured, we recognised, and we welcomed, which isn't really scrutiny, it seems to me. You know, we need to be doing something a little bit more active than that. My specific proposal actually picks up on a point that Councillor Kidd made during the debates around the budget at the beginning of this month, when we talked about the need to actually look at the transformation programme, in other words, the cuts programme, in detail, directorate by directorate. So the recommendation I'm making is that we amend this so that every scrutiny committee looks in detail at the transformation programme as it pertains to that committee, rather than it all sitting with one committee and the rest of us can look at whatever we want to look at, but it's all going to change anyway because the transformation programme is happening, which seems a little bit of a waste of our time. So the recommendation is to rename the one committee the Resources and Performance Committee, and then for all the others to have within their terms of reference looking at the transformation programme as it pertains to that committee. And I would hope that because this is about scrutiny and it's about backbenchers holding the administration to account, that there is a free vote amongst all groups on this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Julia, you seconded. Is there anything you wish to say, or are you going to reserve your right? Or?
I'll reserve my right. Thank you.
Okay. You may wish to speak now then.
I don't think there's anything to add to that, really. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All those in favour of support? Oh, go on then, Leslie. You want to sum up?
Thank you, Councillor Dean. I don't disagree with your description of scrutiny. You know that's one of the reasons why we have put forward to make these changes. I do, however, disagree with your amendment, and the reason for that is you're absolutely right. It is every committee's forward-going and currently responsibility to look at scrutinising the transformation within their own committee. However, somebody has to be accountable on the staff side for transformation, and that somebody is likely to be the transformation manager and also the chief exec. Now, you can't have those people reporting to four different committees, 5 at the moment, 4 in the future. So I am proposing that we retain the title transformation, because at the end of the day, one committee has to be responsible for the overall transformation and holding the staff and the administration to account. You can't do that across individual committees. Individual committees will also look at things in completely different ways. We need to ensure that we have a very structured way of looking at our transformation process. And the best way to do that is for that to go through the the transformation and improvement overview and scrutiny committee. So I'm sorry, I can't support your amendment.
Okay. No, we've finished the discussion, Julia. Sorry, on the amendment anyway. We'll go back to the original in a minute. So, all those in favour of supporting the amendment, please show. Yes, please. Yes, 1, 2, 3. Sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry, please. So hold your hands up high and please keep them up there, or we could be here all day. And those against, please show. In support and 38 against, so the motion has fallen. We will go back to therefore the original item, and I've got Heather Kidd. Heather, thank you for your patience, and then Roger Evans.
Thank you. As many of you will know, I've brought all sorts of questions, motions, and had conversations with Leslie about this very way forward. So I really welcome this. I think it's a long time coming, but actually it's exactly what we need to do. And the proof of the pudding will obviously be in the eating. On those lines, we don't have in the recommendations a review. So because nothing is ever perfect when we start off. And so I was wondering whether the leader would commit to, say, in 12 months' time, just reviewing where we've got to. So that actually when we need to tweak things, we can do exactly that. Because I think that would be a very positive thing. Because it won't all be right. Things never are all right. But this is so... I am so grateful that we've moved this on, because it becomes a point where you think, well, why am I sitting on a scrutiny committee? What difference have I made? And actually, being an angry old woman is one thing, but actually trying to improve what we all do, because it's for our residents across Shropshire, is the most important thing. And I hope this process is going to do exactly that.
Okay, Councillor Roger Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome it, and I welcome the way it's been brought to the council and the openness that's been discussed, and I hope it can continue, because it should be a member-led process. A non-executive function is scrutiny, so the members should lead it and own it. And this council has not really done scrutiny as such, and I support the comments that the previous speaker said in moving the amendment, in that the scrutiny reports today are all about reports. They're committee reports. They're not scrutiny reports, which we need to do. The scrutinies need to add value. Maybe criticise a little bit, be the critical friend, whichever, but they need to add value. So yes, support it. Would want Appendix 2 to actually be worked through with the members and have the open debate between now and the May council meeting, when hopefully we will put it into operation, to look at the functions and pick up some of the items that the amendment said to it, and see how that can be taken through the committees to the number one committee, if that's what we're calling it at present, but to try and work it. The actual amendments to the Constitution, in the way this has been brought forward, I hope that is also in an open way via the group leaders, can be looked at and discussed prior to the paper being published and brought towards the council. We do need to work together, and we do hopefully all need to make it work. We also, as a last addendum, look forward to sharing some of the executive functions for the scrutiny committees, because I think that does need to be shared. It can't be in the ownership of one group. It needs wider, to get that wider ownership from all the backbench members, if I can use that phrase, or the non-executive members. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Roger. Councillor Back, please.
Thank you. We share the frustration really in the current process, which is reflected very much in the reports we're going to wade through in a minute, but also welcome the review. All many of us on the opposition parties have been asking, who serve on the scrutiny committees, have been asking for some time for additional resource, and we're grateful that that now has been provided. We're also very keen that this be looked at and reviewed. We're very grateful that that has been done and been done in a joined up way that we've all been a part of. So it's very welcome. I also welcome the fact it will align with the Shropshire Plan. It will give us all the opportunity to use existing indicators, which will show us exactly where exceptions are, where problems are. We'll have that data running through the issues we want to explore. So again, it's really welcome. And it's also hoped then that the resources will follow where the problems have been identified. I also want to say something quite positive about scrutiny and place it on record. And it's what I said to Camilla when she did the review, and I've repeated it to the Chief Executive. This council isn't completely terrible at scrutiny. We actually have some examples of really good practice that we should be proud of. And I think that if you look at areas where collectively we all together scrutinise third parties, we do a really good job. When we scrutinise and hold the water companies to account, when we hold health partners and the NHS to account, the excellent work looking at housing developers and the work that they're doing. And that to me is proof that when we work together and take off our political hats, we really are capable of effective scrutiny. And what I'd like to see is that approach and that joined up working going forward on these new 4 committees. Thank
you. Okay, well, I'm going to go back to Councillor Nellens then, who reserved his right.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is very positive and it's a more efficient way for scrutiny to run. Anybody who's been involved in transformation of any kind will understand the peril cycle. That's to plan, execute, review, improve, and then lock in a standard operating procedure when you've got that completed. So we've got the plan. We now need to execute it, review it, and then improve on anything that's found in that review until we get it locked in and perfect, if there's such a thing as perfect. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Picton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yep, thank you everybody for your comments. You know, this has been brought forward by genuine desire to want to do things better. And I absolutely pick up on all the points you've all made. So Heather, we absolutely will do a review. I haven't got a problem. I think, in fact, I'm pretty sure if Tom was sitting behind me, he'd be saying, I think we've already talked about this, because I'd like to think we would have read it perfect first time, but you know, who knows? But that would certainly be fine. That's not an issue. Roger, yeah, absolutely. I think that critical friend thing is so important. And I think it's worked really well. And I take Julia's point about where we've worked together in terms of the housing developer papers that Scrutiny have looked at. And it does work really well when we focus on the issues. And I think for me, and this is going to sound a bit perhaps strange, but sitting, working with Tom and working with the group leaders and working with my own group, I've actually got really excited by the possibilities for scrutiny. I never thought I'd sit here and hear myself say, I know Heather's told me a number of times it's exciting, but I never actually thought that I would be able to sit here and say that. And I think there are so many things that we need to be able to get our teeth into in a way that we've not done in the past. And Julia's right. Camilla made the point to me very, very clearly. Scrutiny is not broken in Shropshire. It isn't, but there are improvements we can make. So let's take this forward, make those improvements. As to what happens now, so between now and May, absolutely, I think there needs to be a bit more work on where some of these functions sit. That was a best guess at the time. That doesn't mean that we can't move things around. So the interesting part now is what happens between this meeting today and what happens before we get to the May Annual Council, when we can elect people to those individual committees. So I thank you for your support on this. It's a first step, and there's quite a way to go. But as I say, I am genuinely excited by what is possible. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, well, we will move to the vote. We do have a number of recommendations, 3.1, 0.2, 0.3 and 0.4. All those in favour, please show. Are there any against? Any abstentions? That's unanimous then. Thank you, councillors. Okay, we're going to move on to annual reports. These are for noting, so we won't be voting on them, as as I'm sure you all know. So we will start with item number 9, Communities Overview Committee Annual Report. I invite Councillor Rob Macy to deliver said report.
Thank you, Chair. Taking that direction of hopefully it doesn't become a wade through the reports. The only thing I would start with is just having finished that review item. It's very strange to be sitting here talking about the 21-22 programme of work when we're fast approaching the end of 22-23 programme of work. So I suggest perhaps that's something that's picked up as we go forward. So today I present the annual scrutiny report for 21-22, the communities overview that I chair. The committee is only as strong as its membership. So I would like to extend my thanks to the Vice Chair, the members and the substitutes for the committee for their contributions and commitment. It's also important that we recognise many others who have shared evidence from external bodies as well as officers and others that have joined us, and they've shared their knowledge and insight, which gives the committee the ability to do its work. You have the report, and I'm sure you've read it. You will have seen the range of topics and issues that we discovered and looked at by the committee. Taking the point about doing words, I will come on to that. Our committee is focused upon the community issues. Many of those have been thematic. Many of them have run for many years and will continue to run for many years and be important to the council. But during this year of 22-23, which obviously will get covered next year, I felt it was timely to mention, we've taken up some of those topics. So I just thought you'd like to know some of the work that's been more recent as well. Meeting housing need, one of the pressing concerns of people to Shropshire are the gaps in the housing market. It's a large topic and it was agreed it needed to be broken down, understanding what gaps exist and focusing upon social housing over a series of meetings this year. And we will report on that and make recommendations later this year. The economic growth strategy that's come forward, the new one for 22-27. It's a topic that communities across the county rely upon. The committee scrutinised the strategy since its inception and to ensure that it was clear and focused on the right priorities for local people and businesses. It has also helped design the process for ongoing scrutiny of the strategy and its delivery over the coming years, and that will be baked in to the process and the way that the board is operating in putting that strategy forward. We've also looked at the draft housing allocations policy. With a shortage of certain types of housing, it's key that allocation of housing is prioritised. The committee considered and commented upon the draft housing allocations policy prior to its subsequent adoption by the council. This year has also seen a change in approach to planning the work programme, identifying how a topic will be broken down, what we are looking to achieve, and then producing specific recommendations, just going back to the points that have been raised during the previous debate. At that point, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Well, I've got two people who've indicated, Roger Evans and Tom Biggins. Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. And I think my main point will be echoed by the speaker that follows me, because it's the point that he made earlier on. I note the report. I note in this report there are updates, but there's no actual feedback of what actually happened. So, yeah, both the members on that committee from my group have sent in their apologies today. But can I draw the attention to Blue Badge Scheme? And I note this committee will not be meeting, isn't programmed to meet again before the May Council. But can the chairman take forward to the whatever is fed into the new schemes, the Blue Badge Scheme? It does give great problems. And I think to the majority of members here, the digital is not working. We need to look at it and to find a better way of doing it. So really, it's a say thank you for that on behalf of my members, but that Blue Badge, we do as a council need to look at it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Biggins.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to be very brief, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but yes, it is the Blue Badge Scheme, and I do hope we do look into the possibility of restoring paper applications. Thank you.
Councillor Cloward.
Okay, thank you. This was actually, the Blue Badge scheme was actually brought to Performance Management Committee, and we passed it over to Rob to do some work on, and it will be included in the forward work programme. I've already asked that question, where there will be a task and finish group or an opportunity for members to actually get involved. So I thought I'd pass that on as a matter of information. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Rob, is there anything you want to say? Maybe
Not particularly, other than to give that assurance that the Blue Badge work will go forward as well. And thank you. It's genuinely all members, whether it's cross-party and so on, have contributed to all the meetings. So that's something that has been a positive experience. So thank you.
Yes, having been a scrutiny chair for 6 years, some time ago, it is nice to get the input across everybody that's on it, and it's non-political, and it retains people of every political persuasion. So good. Okay, we will move on then to the Health and Adult Social Care Overview and Scrutiny Committee for their annual report. Councillor Steve Charnley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And like the previous report, it does feel strange looking back at 21-22 actions, especially as I wasn't actually chairman for half of that year. I need to start by thanking the committee members who have maintained their focus and energy as we've looked at topics within the work programme. As a committee that has a strong external facing remit, we've welcomed witnesses from NHS organisations as well as reps from the council, and we've been inclusive of Health Watch Shropshire, who have a complementary powers to our own as a committee. The annual report is the report of HASC, the Health and Adult Social Care Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and not the joint HOSC, which I joint chair with my counterpart from Telford and the Wrekin Council. During 21-22, the joint HOSC, as it's known, looked at developing plans for integrated care system, heard about the closure of ambulance stations, received updates and reports from end-of-life care, proposed changes to inpatient cardiology services and to renal dialysis services, transformation, and this is the big word, musculoskeletal services, and urgent and emergency care improvement and winter planning. So lots going on in the joint HOSC. It's fair to say that some of these topics have continued to be a focus in 22-23, such as development of different aspects of the integrated care system. And much to the frustration of members of the committee, we are continuing to try to get to the bottom of urgent and emergency care and winter planning are just two of the things which spring to mind. Having said all this, I'm not intending to go through the report that you have before you, as I'm sure you've looked across the topics the committee looked at in 21-22. But a couple of topics we focused on I would like to draw your attention to. We emphasised the importance of the JSNA being in place and reinforced this message, expressed our dissatisfaction that this underpinning needs assessment had not been updated or been put in place. This key document not only informs the plans and commissioning arrangements of the council and wider plans of the Shropshire Council area, but also informs the integrated care strategy that is being developed by the Integrated Care Partnership for Shropshire, Telford and Wrekin. During 22-23, members of the committee have stayed in touch with the development of the JSNA and made positive observations about the local focus that's being taken and how this approach has been used to inform local health and care service planning. We looked at the council's learning from the council's winter plan and the preparation for the coming years. This provided a complementary view to that offered by the NHS organisations to joint HOSC. Another related topic that we highlighted in 21-22 that's continued to be identified this year is discharge. I'm sure this will appear somewhere on the work programme for the next year. We carried out robust work programming approach in 22-23, which enabled us to have a clear and prioritised plan, and we have kicked on with this work this year. I'm confident that we are making progress, running with big topics such as Shrewsbury Health and Wellbeing Hub and picking up issues like changes to Welsh Air Ambulance, which we covered recently. So, Mr. Speaker, I'll commend this report to members and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I've had Councillor Heather Kidd and Councillor Bernie Bentic indicate, and then Ruth Houghton. Heather.
Thank you, and I'm sure that we will benefit from in next year's report looking actually at the outcomes. It is really difficult in many areas of this committee to actually get health to engage and to even measure how we've made a difference. I think the most important thing here is that we don't have a full report of the joint HOSC, and I do think because joint HOSC is the only statutory body and therefore is the only one that health have to turn up to, and even then it's a bit patchy. So actually including next year, and that's my request, a proper report for joint HOSC, because I think that's important for all 74 members of the committee, of the council, to actually see what we do on joint HOSC, which is often fed through from HASC. So some of that stuff is only really looked at in depth on joint HOSC. I think that the outcomes will be fundamental, and if by next year or the year after we're seeing that actually we have no outcomes because the ICB, which many members still don't know and many of the public don't know what it is, have not actually come to the table and come back with what we have, what they're going to do about our recommendations or points. And I think the joint work we did on ambulances in a task and finish, which wasn't out of this committee but was across the council, we're still plugging away at to get somewhere with it, and we do have to call them to account in these reports in the future, because it is difficult working for everybody. It's a new way of working, but actually the council is not a second fiddle to the health service, and that point needs to be made somewhere. So I've used this opportunity to flag up my frustrations, and I know they are frustrations of many people across the council. So thank you for the report, but next year's 22-23 should be even better, and when we get to 23-24 it should be stunningly good with good outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bentic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too welcome the changes in scrutiny that are planned for the council. And if you'll bear with me, Mr. Chairman, I just want to briefly talk about a topic to illustrate my final point. Between April 2022 and April 2023, NHS England expected regional integrated care boards to take on delegated responsibility for primary care, secondary care and community dental services. In May 2022, the British Dental Association reported 3,000 dentists had stopped NHS dental care since the start of the pandemic. There are 68 NHS dental practices in Shropshire, Telford and Wrekin, but a search recently found only 50 of them. And of those, 18 were not accepting new patients on the NHS. 24 had not updated their website or their practice information. 4 only accepted new patients aged 17 years or under. And only 1 was accepting new patients without restriction. The contract for primary dental care and community care for 2023 was approximately 25 million for Shropshire, Telford and Wrekin. There is no change for 2023-24, despite a 10% increase in inflation, and despite an increase in fees levied by the government from April of this year by 8.5%. The most recent statistics for 2021 for Shropshire, Telford and Wrekin showed that only 1 in 6 of the population was seen by an NHS, sorry, were seen by a dental practice. And of those, over half were paying adults. This is contrary to national guidelines. None of this, to my knowledge, came before either the Health and Adult Social Care Overview and Scrutiny Committee or HOSC. And so my question, please, to the chair of the committee is, will he please ensure that items of long-term and current importance are standing agenda items until that committee or the council resolves to remove them for evidence-based reasons? Thank you.
Thank you. That will give him something to get his teeth into.
Yes.
Councillor Houghton.
Thank you, Chairman. As has already been noted, these reports cover the period 2021 to 2022. Bishop's Castle Community Hospital closed suddenly in November 2021. Health and Adult Social Care noted in November 2021 the significant number of questions and comments received and resolved to hold an additional meeting in January 2022 to address these. In the event, both the additional and the scheduled meeting in January were cancelled. As we now know, following a judicial review, Shropshire Community Health Trust recognised that the closure of Bishop's Castle Community Hospital was in fact unlawful. I find it very concerning that the unlawful closure without consultation of a local hospital is not even mentioned in a scrutiny report when a significant number of questions and concerns were raised. What is the reason for this? Do rural communities and the issues that impact on them not matter? And is it acceptable that an NHS provider, part of the ICB, can make unilateral decisions? And in these instances, what teeth does scrutiny really have? Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Chalmers, I'll come back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A couple of things just to follow up on there. Councillor Bentic, I did wonder where you were going with it until we finally got to the question. But as you know, the work programme is being discussed at the next meeting, in the next couple of meetings, and that subject will certainly be high on the agenda, I should imagine. So watch this space. Councillor Houghton, Bishop's Castle has had a good airing this year, but obviously this report is 21-22. So it came in right at the tail of that. I should imagine it will feature loud and proud on next year's scrutiny report. And work is obviously still going on because it's still on the current work programme. So we shall be returning to the subject at a later meeting.
Thank you. I think there was a question from Councillor Kidd as well about the joint HOSC.
I took that as a statement, not a question, to be honest.
Okay. I think you'll have to pick that up with Steve afterwards.
Sorry, it was whether it was going to be should be a joint or a single paper, wasn't it? I think that's something for committee services to put on the agenda, not myself, but happy to support you in that.
Okay, there we go. No, Councillor Bentic, we finished.
I just wanted an answer to my question.
I thought, were you not listening? I heard the answer.
Chair, did mention the dental services, Mr. Chairman, but not the question about ensuring items of long-term and current importance, standing agenda items, until the committee or council resolve to remove them for evidence-based reasons.
Okay, I'm going to move on. I think you can pick that up with him afterwards. Okay, People and Overview Committee Annual Report. I'm going to invite Councillor Peggy Mullock to say a few words about the report that I'm sure everybody's read. Councillor Mullock.
Okay. Today I present the annual scrutiny report for 21-22 for the People Overview Committee. My thanks go to the members of the committee who looked into the topics we identified in our work programme. I would also like to thank those who have attended our meetings and informed our work by sharing evidence, knowledge and insights with the committee and supported the committee to do its work. I'm not intending to go through the report that you have before you, as I'm sure you've noted the scope of topics that the committee looked at. 21-22 followed the periods of lockdown in 2021, and we explored the short and longer term impact of the pandemic on the lives of young people. Concerns relating to the increasing numbers of children who were becoming looked after and the impact on the attainment of some young people informed our work programme. Following a request from the Financial Strategy Task and Finish Group, we looked at the implementation and performance of Stepping Stones, which provides wraparound, customised support for looked after children, young people and adults. With an eye on the increasing number of children who were becoming looked after, we were struck by the potential to deliver better care for children in home environments rather than in residential care that could be out of county. And I can report, probably shouldn't, but Stepping Stones is moving on very, very well and doing a great job. We reported the issues related to the rising number of children expelled from school and the increasing vulnerability to exploitation when outside of education settings, and the higher prevalence of children with special education needs and the role of services that support children at risk of being expelled. And that number has gone down as well. Mental health services for children and young people have long been our line of sight. We've continued our focus on during 21-22, making the link between the young people's substance misuse services and CAMS. And we've maintained a view of this key area of support, which is not directly delivered by the council. We will maintain our interest in these services, working with the Health and Adult Social Care Committee and through them the Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee to use their powers when it comes to services provided by the NHS. During 22-23 and going forward, we've become increasingly concerned about the importance of the different partners within the system that the council operates in, needing to fill their roles and responsibilities, working together to deliver effective outcomes for service users, patients, children and young people, families, etc. We have had senior officers from the integrated care system to our meetings, and we will continue to invite them to inform our work. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Councillor Kevin Pardy.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Mollock. I've got a script here that was quite negative, but having listened to Councillor Mollock, it's quite different. And the only thing I would have been, and this is not a criticism of the Chair or the committee or any individual group, things seemed less positive at that time than is indicated in the report. But there could be reasons for that, and one of those reasons may be that this report has had to been written 2 years after the beginning of the report year, which seems to me ridiculous. I can't remember what I did last week sometimes, but I believe that Councillor Mollock's report would have been different, and she's mentioned it would have been very different if that report had been written after yesterday's meeting, because yesterday's meeting has highlighted problems in the past that should never have been, and positivity for the future. So thank you, Councillor Mollock.
Okay, Councillor Mollock. Oh, sorry, Roger. You got that up just in time.
Thank you, Chairman. I didn't know if anybody else wished to speak who were a member of that committee. I'm a substitute member, so I've attended some of them. Yeah, but where I'm coming from is to do with schools, and it's for the future. There are a number of schools with the present financial support that's being given via the government and Shropshire Council are having problems balancing their budget and the national funding formula. The Schools Forum look at it and recommend to Shropshire Council how it should go ahead, but I'm not sure that it's ever been looked at by a scrutiny committee. But with the problems that some schools are having in financing the needs of their children, I would ask that this be looked at and the chairman take it forward into the new process, or whichever, that it is looked at and examined, because, as I say, some schools may well be heading into a deficit because of the requirements for the pay wage, which is still being negotiated, energy, and other functions there, and it may well interfere with the education of the children. So I think this council does need to look at the welfare of the children attending our schools and the finances that they're having to use to actually balance what is needed and provided. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I would remind members that it is within the gift of every single member to offer up suggestions for scrutiny committees to look at stuff, but perhaps when we're addressing their reports is time to talk about what they've done as opposed to what they could do. That could be put forward differently, but your point has been received, Roger. Thank you. Peggy?
Yes, I made a note of what Roger has said.
Good. Anything else you want to say?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the new challenge that we've got coming forward in our committee.
Good.
We'll take it on.
Excellent. Thank you, Peggy. Okay, we will move on then to the Place Overview Committee Annual Report, and I invite Councillor Joyce Barrow to present the report.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be presenting the Annual Scrutiny Report for 2021-22 for the Place Overview Committee. I'd like to extend my thanks to the members of the committee for their contributions and commitment, and also to those who have shared evidence, knowledge and insights with the committee and supported the committee to do its work. And in particular, members of the public, and particularly on the housing developments, we seem to hit a high note with finding issues that the public want us to look at. You have the report and I am sure that you have read it, so I won't go through any of the detail. You have seen the range of topics and issues that have been looked at by the committee. I think all the task and finish groups that the committee has commissioned have come up with really good recommendations. And we have also continued to follow up on progress with recommendations that have been made. For example, our work on signs and banners, street closures. Although it was completed this year, there has also been some really good work on the housing development that we will cover in more detail in our next annual report, with the recommendations to be taken to Cabinet in the coming weeks. Another area of our work I want to highlight is the working group that the committee established to look at winter maintenance, which made recommendations about empowering local communities to manage their own gritting outside of the strategic gritting routes. We heard only last week about the initiatives that have been put in place during 2022-23, such as providing tools and access to salt to communities, for example, schools to grit the pathways in their area. I have followed up with Cabinet throughout the year on the recommendations that have been presented to them previously and that they agreed to respond to. I hope that the implementation of actions that deliver against recommendations from the Scrutiny Improvement Review will help to develop the two-way relationship between the Overview and Scrutiny Committee and Cabinet. During 2022-23 and looking forward into 23-24 and beyond, I'd like to explore how we involve members of the public with specific interest and knowledge in the items we are looking at, whether through written evidence or by seeing them face to face. And I look forward to working more closely with portfolio holders and Cabinet members and hope all members of this council will input into the work of the committee. As with all of the Overview and Scrutiny committees, we have identified some consistent and important themes and messages that we have continued to look at during 2022-23 and that we believe will be an ongoing area of focus for our committee, Overview and Scrutiny, and therefore the council as well. The importance of the council working in partnership with our communities and the organisations and groups to enable the delivery of services, support and outcomes in different ways in local places. The importance of ensuring that delivering services in a largely rural and sparsely populated area is taken into account as topics are considered and work is undertaken to amend, develop policy, services and changes in rural areas is kept in focus when impact and progress is looked at. And in summary, I feel that this committee continues to deliver really good work and the outcomes of that work continue to shape the way we deliver important services to the people and businesses of Shropshire. And I have to quote our leader, I'm really excited about the future of scrutiny. Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer questions and I give up this report to members.
Thank you. Well, I've got three people who have indicated. First of all, David Basmer, Julian Dean, and Heather Kidd.
Thank you.
First, you're first on the list. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just to start off by saying I welcome the changes to scrutiny, and I'm looking forward to taking part in scrutiny committees in the future. But just on this particular report, I do think there's some interesting initiatives have been taken under Councillor Barrow's leadership, and I welcome some of the reports that we've been involved in. But my concern, I suppose, is on the care WSCP contracts, which I've been concerned about for some time. And if you look at the report on page 4, it says that we did actually cover that, but that the committee believed that a more responsive service was being developed. And more recently, we've had reports of problems with street lighting, which comes from our poor. Lost echoing what Councillor Bentley proposed earlier. I think it would be sensible, given that the care contract and the WSP contracts are such big contracts and have such an impact. If I just talk loudly, you'll be able to hear me.
Yeah.
Sorry about this.
That's all right.
Oh, right. I'm getting.
Yeah, don't put it in stereo, please.
Yeah, I think I've destroyed four microphones in the course of this little speech. But just say getting back to the subject, my main concern is the WSP and care contracts. And my feeling is that more recently, with a lot of the members I know have had problems with street lights. We've all had complaints from residents, and this is because we haven't been monitoring and managing the care contract as effectively as we might. Provisions have been put in place to actually improve that, and I welcome the work that's being done. But I do think that going forward, it would be sensible to have those contracts, care and WSPP, as a standing item on the scrutiny meetings, and that as Councillor Bentley suggested, these are items in the place overview section which are absolutely crucial. The other thing I'd just like to say is that there have been recent developments on the street scene and the emptying of bins in Shrewsbury, which we've had real problems. There's been bins have been left overflowing with rubbish, and there's been a lot of comment about this. And I think this is something we really need to investigate at the next.
Sorry, David, can I just step in? This section is for questions about the report. And I did give some advice to members just a couple of minutes ago about if you want things to be looked at for scrutiny, then there are vehicles for putting that forward. But when we're talking to the report that's been given, perhaps this isn't the right place to put those forward. Anybody is able to put forward a piece of work request to the scrutiny committee. But with all due respect, we're supposed to be concentrating on the report that's been given and not on a future work programme. There is the ability to do that outside of this chamber. So by all means finish, but please don't rattle off a list of things that you'd like them to look at. Have a chat about the good things that they have done, please, or ask questions about the good things they've done. Thank you.
Yes, well, I'd just like to say that under Councillor Barrow's leadership, Chair, we've had done a number of very successful investigations, and I do hope that will continue and improve into the next session of scrutiny.
All right, good, thank you. Councillor Kidd.
I hadn't realised we got through 3. I mean, I'm at number 3. Thank you very much for this, Joyce. I was interested in the highways diversions thing, and actually report the bullet point on that. And really, really pleased that you managed in that year to get Keir to recruit a communications officer. With recent experience, I wondered whether the committee have then reviewed the success of that communications post or not.
Thank you. Councillor Dean.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the report, Joyce, and also I'd like to echo Councillor Vasmer and thank you for your chairing. I think it's been very inclusive, and it's been a joy actually at times to take part in this committee. I don't want to go over the top in terms of a love-in today, but I would just point out, perhaps in the interests of some friendly competition between the scrutiny committees, that we have the most recommendations in this report. At one point, it actually says made numerous recommendations in the report. I'd also like to welcome Joyce's comments about making sure that we hear from our communities in scrutiny. I think it'd be very interesting to consider how we can best do that, whether that's through co-optees or having regular sort of members of the community or community organisations being regularly invited to scrutiny. I think that'd be an interesting thing to explore. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Barrow.
Thank you. Councillor Vesmer, what you said about Keir and WSP contracts, I note your comments and happy to discuss with you and a committee at a later stage. And thank you for your very kind comments about me. I'm going home very happy today. Councillor Kidd, again, I'll review the communications officer's role, whatever they're doing now, and see whether that is actually working and has improved everything. You think it hasn't, but that's another thing. But anyway, we'll look at that. We will review it, and I will do that actually. As soon as I've finished this meeting, I will send an email and ask for an update. Thank you very much. Julian, I love you too. Again, thank you very much for your comments. I have to say, I find members of the opposition extremely helpful and useful, as well as the administration members. We do all work together. I do like to think that the committee isn't political. And later on, I would like to make a comment about something else we will be looking at in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's hope Julian now goes home as happy as you're going to, obviously. Okay. Performance Management Scrutiny Committee Annual Report. I invite Claire Wild to present the report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. That's a hard one to follow, but I'll try. So I just want to begin by thanking everybody, all the members of the committee, and actually, especially Roger, because he is always there to challenge. And I think with his constant challenge, he ensures that we all read the papers properly, hopefully, anyways. So thank you for that, Roger. It is a bit strange having the 2021 paper, and I just thought I'd just point out a couple of things. So on the 20th of March 21, that was when everybody got their first COVID jab. December 21 was when face masks were compulsory. And actually, on the 22nd of March 22, 49 million people, or 73% of the population, had been vaccinated. So, just to put it in context, 21-22 was a little bit of a strange year. I've got the report. I'm not going to go through the report in any great detail. I just want to mention two things, really. The one is that we've concentrated on trying to get performance data, and I think that's now coming through. And I think that's really, really important, especially as we enter the phase of transformation. We can actually look at the data, and that is going to be really important for all of us. And the other thing is Shropshire Plan. Healthy people, healthy economy, healthy environment, and healthy organisation. And we did quite a lot of the early work on the Shropshire Plan, and hopefully that is coming to fruition. You can see the changes in the scrutiny, which have basically followed the Shropshire Plan. So I thank you all for taking part in that, and hopefully we can make a real difference with that. I'm going to stop there and take any questions any of you may have. Thank you.
Councillor Evans has a question to ask you about your report on the committee that he sits on. Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. And I'll try and phrase it for this report And it's the first two items on page 112, financial strategy, task and finish and financial monitoring. Yes, it did work in 21-22. We did it, and the director and cabinet members did come along to the task and finish group to actually present their reports and to answer questions. Since then, I don't think it's happened, and I would urge that it is continued in the coming years. But yet, 21-22, we did have the executive director along, and they presented their budgets so that we could actually see it. Due to time scales or whatever, it hasn't happened since. But long may it continue that we do receive the reports, of course.
Yes, Roger. Councillor Buckley.
Thank you. It's not a question, it's a comment really regarding the report. Like everybody, it's a test of our memory, isn't it? And I'm sure we all hope that going forwards we'll be receiving the reports both timely and separately so that we can go through them in detail rather than trying to remember something from when I was very first elected. This year was the COVID year, Claire, but all the meetings moved online and we continue to work very effectively. And one of the other things we did was explore and investigate how funding and activity adjusted during COVID. So I think actually this particular committee didn't suffer during COVID year, quite the opposite. It was a good opportunity for members to understand which business continued as usual and how resources were reallocated. So that was a really important function of this committee. There are some debates and investigations I recall which haven't made the cut into your report. And of course, you have to pick out the best bits, the ones where we've had the most impact. But there were issues that were raised, and access to data was the key to this. So the performance portal that the team have now made available to all members has enabled particularly members of this committee to check any issues which have not appeared on the committee for us to bring them to your attention and talk about exception reports. And we really appreciate the work that's gone in to set up that portal. The next stage now is to make sure that all the data is up to date. And I've just bobbed a few emails while we've been listening today, because some of them are only as far as December 2020. And obviously we need those to be refreshed so that we can have that to our fingertips. So I look forward to the next year's report where we can talk about some current activity. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Wild.
Yeah, I just want to come back. I think what Roger was talking was about the financial task and finish group. And actually, we've had two this year. And I think Roger forgot to sign up, but I invited him anyway. And we had them in the North Wing when it was absolutely freezing cold and I had about 4 coats on. I remember it well. So they are ongoing. And I think the fairest thing to say is that when we do the set the work programme setting will be open to everybody to come along. And so what I would encourage people to do is even if you're not on the committee, come along to setting the work programme and let's have a really good work programme for all the committees. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Okay, that concludes the reports from standards. We'll move on to item 14, which is the report, of scrutiny. We'll move on to item 14, which is a report from the chairman of the Standards Committee. So I'm going to invite Councillor David Evans to deliver his report.
Thank you. I presume everyone has seen the report sent in the agenda, but as the chair of Standards Committee, I agreed with the Monitor Officer to provide a short update on the work of the committee and its oversight of complaints that unitary, town and parish councils have failed to comply with the code of conduct that applies to their council. A cross-section of these complaints has been provided in the report for members' information. As explained in the report, the Monitor Officer has delegated authority to take initial steps towards a formal investigation. To deal with these complaints, he does so in context of limited sanctions available to the committee. We currently include such options, amongst others, as training, censure, and seeking the apology from the member complained of. As a result of coming into force of the local act and the abolition of the previous standards board regime, there is no power to suspend or disqualify councillors from breaching the code. It is acknowledged that out of 27 complaints made in 2022, only one was referred to investigation, but a significant number of complaints illicit apologies and its initial stage, which was judged to be probably all that could be achieved following investigation in the event. As a result, it is only the most serious cases that is considered proportionate to instigate an investigation. A number of complaints have been raised in context and social media posts, which it can be very difficult to establish that the council was acting in the official capacity. I therefore move the report be considered debate to please note that if a member wishes to raise any technical questions on this report, then because of the number of complaints which are dealt with personally by the monitoring officer, I am likely to need and provide response in writing for the following their meeting. Thank you.
Roger, and then Julia.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Evans, for the report. I do note the title where it doesn't have any year in it, but you do note it within the report. But where my question is coming, well, question and comment is that I think I join you in your, if I read your speech correctly, in that it would be good if there were stronger sanctions that could be employed against councillors who do transgress, including parish councillors and all sorts. But I think it's a little bit muted what councillors, what the standards committee can actually implement. So yeah, I think we all would want it a bit stronger, but the actual question is, I note in the report there's nothing there about pecuniary interests and any transgression there. Maybe in a written answer if needed, can the policy that is adopted by the council, if there is any accusation concerning pecuniary and declarations of that respect, the attitude that the council takes? And as I say, Chairman, I note the comments. It may be in a written reply to all members, but I'd just like to have that there and all can understand what the Shropshire Council would do in that respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger.
Councillor Buckley.
Yes, thank you. I note the report and in particular the statistics. So out of 27 complaints about the behaviour and conduct of elected members, only one was investigated. That's 3.7% of all complaints in a 12-month period. And only 4 were even considered by elected members on the panel. That's 14.8%. I'd like to understand how that compares to other authorities, because I'm concerned that's putting a lot of pressure on one single officer, the monitoring officer, to make lots of decisions. And I feel that the panel of elected councillors is there to do a job, which is to share the burden of ensuring that these complaints are investigated thoroughly. And I hope that when we hear next year's report, I hope that we hear some different statistics.
Councillor Chris Schofield.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the social media, I find it astounding that no one's ever brought to heel, basically. This will be a scrutiny item forever, unless there's national guidelines or guidelines from this council. And I just believe that people, I call it the toxic world of social media, I personally don't go on it. I think it's a sewer. I think it's a dreadful thing personally, but there we are. And it will always be at the top of the scrutiny. And no one will ever be brought to heel. I just don't know the answer to it. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Councillor Evans, you got anything you wish to say?
Well, both Roger and Julie, I will come back in writing with those, because I just have to take that up with the monitor officer. So I will come back to you in time with an answer of that in writing. Okay? Well, thank you for your question.
All right,
thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll move on to item 15, which is changes to committee membership. I'm going to move that the changes as detailed before you are approved.
I will second that recommendation.
Good. All those in favour, please show. I think that looks unanimous. Any against? Any abstentions? You put your hands down now, because you voted 3 times, you two. You approved, you abstained, and you voted against. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 16 then, which is notices of motion. We have a motion from Councillor Julian Dean, which is supported by the Green and Labour and Liberal Democrat groups. Julian?
Thank you very much. This motion concerns water quality, sewage and planning. I'm very pleased to bring this motion to Council with backing from across all parties, which seeks to ensure that Shropshire Council does everything it can to tackle the unacceptable levels of pollution from human waste that is finding its way into our watercourses and rivers. The scale of this growing problem is mind-boggling. Others, I'm sure, will highlight the scale, the specifics of the local issues. But we know it's a national problem. And so whilst it's great to have support from all parties for this motion, we can't let the Conservative government off the hook because this is happening on their watch. Only 14% of our rivers are in good ecological health, and none of them is in good chemical health. We don't know the levels of E. coli and, let me get this right, intestinal enterococci in our rivers, but we do know that levels are rising in bathing waters across the country, so we can be fairly confident that this is happening in rivers too. The Conservative chair of the Environment Audit Committee, Ludlow MP Philip Dunn, made clear to the recent Shrewsbury Town Council meeting that the illegal levels of untreated sewage entering our freshwater systems is down to decades-long of lack of investment by the water companies. But this was predictable when they were allowed to siphon off water bill payments to fund shareholder dividends and executive bonuses. Shockingly, in the year to March 2022, England's water companies spent almost 3.8 billion on servicing debt and paying annual dividends to shareholders, while all 9 invested 1.8 billion in environmental improvements. Clearly, this public service needs to be brought back into public ownership. Meanwhile, funding for environmental protection services provided by the government's Environment Agency has been cut by 50% over the past decade. And who does the government turn to for advice? DEFRA, the responsible government department, set up the Council for Sustainable Business precisely for this role, which then appointed our own Severn Trent water boss as the chair, despite her organisation being funded 1.5 million in 2021 for illegal sewage discharges. So receiving bonuses for running companies that are being fined for illegal pollution are leading the advice to the government on what to do about it. It should therefore come as no surprise that the Conservative government is failing in its duty to protect our waterways. But back to what we can do. Up until now, there's been no challenge to Severn Trent Water to ensure the infrastructure is in place to cope with increasing demand from housing development. They have a duty to connect our homes to the system, and so there are no checks that this will work effectively or will not overload the system in those areas where development is taking place. My Green Party colleagues at Lewes District Council in Sussex were the first in the country to challenge this, and they sought legal opinion on what councils can do. So this motion is based on their pioneering work, which has now been replicated in many councils around the country. By voting for this motion, you will be putting in place a system whereby we can at least ask the right questions, even though, as the law stands, Severn Trent can avoid providing answers. But even without those answers, it is now clear that planners can draw their own conclusions, so we need to build up a database. And then we will need to take this evidence base into consideration when making planning decisions and when conditioning the phasing of development. And then we will need the administration to let our planners know that they will back them when they apply these conditions robustly. I so move.
Thank you very much. And I understand this is being seconded by Councillor Kate Halliday. Is that correct?
Yes, can I speak now, Chair?
Yes, if you wish to.
Yeah, thanks. I'm really pleased to be seconding this cross-party motion. I've kind of focused in the building of this motion on what's known as Grampian conditions, and I just wanted to talk a little bit more about what that means. So everybody who builds a home, whether it's 1 or 100, has the right to connect to the sewage system. And the water companies legally have to provide adequate infrastructure in order to keep our rivers healthy and keep our whole infrastructure going. And that is a legal obligation. I think the concern is that as housing has been growing across Shropshire, that perhaps some of the infrastructure hasn't been growing at the right pace, and that may be why we're getting more
sewage into our rivers, which has almost become an arm of this overall sewage system. I just want to discuss something that's happened in West Oxfordshire in the last week or so, just to help people understand what this motion might mean. Not Severn Trent, it is Thames Water, have made it clear that they cannot provide adequate infrastructure in sewage for a housing development that has just been announced. They say they can't do it. They approached the housing developer, who I think isn't communicating with them, so they're just intending to continue to go on. So that puts Thames Water in a difficult position, because they potentially, you know, they're going to break the law if they don't provide the adequate infrastructure. So Thames Water approached West Oxfordshire District Council to ask that they put in place the sort of planning legislation we're talking about today. What they have asked for is that the council say that people cannot move into any housing development until the sewage infrastructure is in place. So they can build, but they can't move in until the water companies put that sewage infrastructure in place. And so I think that's something that we should really look at Shropshire Council. I'm very pleased that this motion has been put forward. I'm very pleased that we are looking at reinstating the task and finish group that was implemented when I brought this issue to council last year. And I do hope that people support this motion.
Okay, now, thank you very much for that. I understand that there's broad acceptance of this. I do also understand that Councillor Richard Marshall wishes to speak to a couple of amendments that he has asked to be included, and I believe they are going to be included, I'm sure. But Councillor Marshall, would you like to have your say about your amendments, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and you'll be relieved to know I'm going to be extremely brief. I'd like to point out, without the political points scoring, the administration does recognise that the River Severn and the water quality is an absolute jewel in the crown of Shropshire as a whole. And we do support that there is a robust approach taken to water quality. So in looking through the motion, we do largely agree with it, but I would like to go a stage further and add the following two resolutions to the motion, if I may. We're looking for a task and finish group was established to look at water quality, which for a variety of reasons did not progress. Therefore, it is requested that the Chair of Place Scrutiny re-establish the task and finish group, and on its conclusion take the findings to the relevant scrutiny committee and also to Cabinet. And also number 10, in addition, the scrutiny chair is requested to write to both the Right Honourable Philip Dunn MP, who is the chair of the Environmental Audit Committee, and the River Severn Partnership, requesting their collaboration and participation in the water quality task and finish group. They're the two additions that I would like to add as an amendment to the motion.
Please, let's see if we can keep it to sort of questions as opposed to, you know, just re-endorsing what's a good piece of work, if you understand what I mean. Councillor Benty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The state of Shropshire's rivers, I'm afraid, is a scandal, and I'm delighted that this motion has been put to try to improve the situation. But to give a flavour of the extent of the problem, in storm overflows discharge raw sewage into the catchment of the River Severn more than 20,000 times. And so this is a serious problem. Yeah. The problem of the capacity of the combined storm overflows is the major issue. And only 1.3% of discharges are due to exceptional weather activities, exceptional weather events. The rest are due to capacity problems. Severn Trent Water has so far refused to publicly state what its investment strategy is for improving Shropshire's rivers. And so I will be brief and say that I strongly support this motion and would ask for Severn Trent Water to please urgently publish its strategy for improving Shropshire's rivers. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barrow, then Councillor Hignett.
Thank you. I'd just like to say that I support Councillor Marshall's amended motion. Should it go forward? I have already contacted Philip Dunn when we previously thought we were going to look at this, and I know that we have his wholehearted support. He has already sent information, so I would be glad to pick this up again. And looking at the new way of scrutiny working, if we do a task and finish group on this, I'd like to offer Kate Halliday to chair that meeting because I know she has a particular interest in it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hignett? I've seen you, don't worry. Panic not.
Thank you, Chair. Support the amendments to this motion. I just wonder if everybody else has seen this leaflet off Severn Trent that came with our bills that we've just received through the post. Just one quote from Severn Trent saying we pledged to make through the Get River positive commitments. Also says they've been awarded a 4-star rating from the Environment Agency for the 3rd year running. So what this motion does and what they're pledging to do, we just need to make sure we hold them to it. Thank you, Chair.
Good. Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, it's a really simplistic question. Just looking at Richard Marshall's amendments, the additional 2 points, the second point there where you're asking that we write to Philip Dunn and that the River Severn Partnership Committee, surely if the chair of the River Severn Partnership is one of our own employees, surely he's the director of place. I'd like to think he would already be in the room, and why isn't that relationship already a given?
Go on, I'll let you answer that. I probably shouldn't, but there you go.
Well, I would assume if he's in the room as the executive director of place, he's in the room as the executive director of place at that time and not as the chair of the River Severn Partnership.
Okay, Julia, please. It's not a debate between 2 people, it's a debate between all of us. I'm sensing very broad support for this, and I keep seeing hands pop up. I will bring you in, Roger, but you're going to be the last person I bring in because everybody finalises by saying that they support this motion that's been amended, which Julian's accepted. So, all right, I will bring you in as well, Rosemary, and that's it then, because if everyone, unless you're going to dissent against it, there's no point you telling everybody over a couple of minutes how much you agree with it, because I think we're all doing. That's what the vote's for. Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. I support it, but also what I put my hand up for is that I've just been notified of a publication from the Environment Agency today, and I'll read you the headline. Muller charity payment for ammonia discharge to the River Tern. £100,000 has been donated to Shropshire Wildlife Trust for their pollution. So it isn't only the river and everything like this. There are other rivers in Shropshire, and this has just been published by the government today to do with pollution of our watercourses. So it is something that we do need to ensure that it is taken seriously and it is taken forward. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Dartmouth. Claire, I'm not going to take it. I did say I was going to finish with these 2. I think we'll move to the vote then.
It was just a point of information.
No, Claire, thank you. Rosemary.
Thank you. I just want to say that we owe a debt of gratitude to the many activists who've devoted much of their free time to exposing the role of water companies in actively damaging this vital resource, low levels of infrastructure, investment, etc., when they should actually be fierce guardians of water quality. There are several common sources of pollution, a variety of bodies involved, and it will be invaluable for this council to make its own independent inquiries to scrutinise how, why and where pollution occurs throughout Shropshire, to consider what can be done to mitigate for the resulting damage, including using a planning system as indicated in the motion. I'm speaking to the part of Councillor Marshall's amendment just to point out the task and finish group was established from interested members from all political parties not many weeks ago, a couple of months ago. The terms of reference were set, the chair was elected, and the first investigative meeting, which I think is really important that it is investigative, was set for early February. Other parties were invited to attend, including, as someone else has said, Philip Dunn MP, who has obviously a lot to add to the conversation. The River Severn Partnership is mainly involved with flooding throughout the whole. Are you saying that's not the case? Sorry.
No,
yeah,
just
okay.
carry
The River Severn Partnership, in my understanding of it, is involved mainly with flooding throughout the whole river course of the River Severn, which is Shropshire is a minor part of which. I think that it's important that this task and finish group is independent and it's not prescribed from the whole council, that those members of the task and finish group can actually carry out a proper investigation so they and therefore council members understand fully what the problems are. And I would hope that we would not agree to the second part of Councillor Marshall's amendment, therefore.
All right. I have been informed by Tim that Claire wished to bring forward a point of information. So I will let you speak, but that will be it then. I think we're all broadly support this. We can kick this around and kick it around and we'll all arrive at the same destination. So Claire, point of information, I understand.
Thank you. Yes, so the chair of the Rivers Partnership, my understanding is the director of place is actually co-chair, not chair. He co-chairs it with the EA, so I just thought you ought to know that.
Yeah, all right. Good. Okay, so that's it. We kicked it around. Julian.
Thank you very much. Just to confirm, I do accept the amendment and to echo Councillor Dartmoor's point specifically about campaigners. If it wasn't for the campaigners from up Sewage Creek, who are part of a national campaign really to try and keep our rivers clean, I think these issues probably wouldn't have got the notice that they have. So I just wanted to echo that and thank you.
So, thank you. Tim's just telling me how to suck eggs. It's his job. Okay, so we had the original proposal. Julian has really accepted all the amendments that have been put forward. It's been an active piece of work and actually a credit, I think, to everybody that everybody's on the same page as this one. So we're only going to vote on the amended motion, which was originally Julian's, but there's been some amendments which have been accepted. So all those in favour, please show. Are there any against? I thought not. Any abstentions? No. Brilliant. Thank you, members. So we will move on to the second motion that we have, which is a motion received from Councillor Andy Boddington and supported by the Liberal Democrat group. I'm going to get this motion out of the way and then we will see what the time is. And talk about stopping for lunch should that's what people wish to do. So, because we're in one of those funny grey areas now, it's 12:20. Anyway, there we go. Andy Boddington.
Thank you, Chair. I will try and be brief so that hopefully we can get all business done before lunch. But this is a fairly straightforward motion. And I think it's rather important that in terms of the Shropshire plan, of which people's health is a major plank, and active travel is one of the ways of promoting people's health. And we're absolutely clear what we're talking about. We're talking about walking and cycling. Now, at the moment, we have a process underway called LC-WIP, which is the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, which is shortly to go to consultation. I'm not sure it's out yet, but that has a plan for the towns in the county, and there are a lot of very good things in it. There are a lot of things that some people may not like, so there will be a debate over that, and that's important. But we have to think about, okay, when we come out the end of that, whatever is agreed, we need to think about funding it, and then we need to think about tracking it. And if we want to make active travel a sort of budget centre, very clear budget centre, so that we know what is going into active travel. Now, we're not asking this morning for the council to agree a budget. We're just asking for a budget line, so that when it comes next year, so we start doing the budget process again, we'll have the results of LC Whip, and we'll be able to see how much we can progress within our resources towards that. So that's the major bit about the council. This comes in the background of a cut in funding by the government. We're suggesting the leader writes, following the leader of actually the Mayor of West Midlands, and writes to ministers to express concerns. We're not suggesting criticising the government, but just saying that from the perspective of the Shropshire plan, this is important. Active travel is important, and highlight its importance for ministers. And that, I think, is all I need to say on that.
Okay, and it now says here that it is being supported by the Liberal Democrat group. Would there be one particular individual that's seconding? Oh, Rob. Okay.
I'll reserve my right if that's okay.
Good. Rosemary Dartnell.
Thank you. Well, I fully recognise that in this room we may have a variety of different opinions. I've personally managed to get through some challenging political times, particularly national government-wise, by telling myself that at least active travel was being funded. I will have to find something else to calm me through 2023 and much of 2024. The cut to the active travel budget is no laughing matter. It represents a damaging blow to essential decarbonisation of travel, but also to health potential, and limits achievement of the Shropshire Plan aims. It requires us locally to step up and make provision within the budget to facilitate increased uptake of walking and cycling. If you search Shropshire Council's website for active travel, there's a subheading, active travel and EV funding. If you click on that, you're presented with a list of EV projects, which in itself is all well and good. But here, Shropshire Council appears to subcontract all thought of active travel to others by providing a list of third parties involved in promoting active travel. Nothing from the council. Yes, we have developed an LC Whip plan for Shropshire for the medium term, but the council's website is a very clear illustration of a lack of full commitment to engage with active travel as a real alternative for drastically reduced carbon short journeys. Voting for this motion will allow energetic engagement with active travel and inform the public accordingly.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Nevins.
Thank you, Chairman. Just in regards to the first point, I confirm that Shropshire Council's commitment to active travel and providing choices to allow residents to walk, cycle and, where necessary, to drive safely is essential. Members, as you just mentioned, will be aware of the local walking cycle LCWIP, local walking cycle infrastructure programme, and the school streets projects. So we have a 6-week consultation which starts on the 17th of April. That will include a number of roadshows around all the 7 towns that are involved, the centre points for them, and will also include school visits in those towns as well. In addition to that, there will be interactive online question and answer sessions and briefings so that the public can get fully involved. And I say that starts on the 17th of April, and the week starting Tuesday the 9th of May will be the week's consultations, or the presentations and roadshows. Going through the towns, the last one being on Monday, the following Monday in Bridgenorth. On top of that, you imagine we've already started consultations with various organisations, and I've just put myself forward to be our Clean Air champion, which will involve taking part in consultations along with the Walking and Cycling Commissioner and transport reps from the West Midlands. We're looking at the roll out V-mobility options across communities to help cut congestion, tackle air pollution, and provide residents with safe and easy ways to get about. This will take a bit of time, but I'm confident that all these measures put in place will see people, members will be aware at the minute we are a level 1 authority. Our desire is to rise up to the next step to be a level 2, which will attract more funding. And I'm confident that with the projects that are coming and taking place in the near future, that will be realised. I take on Councillor Dartmouth's point that we need to update the information that is going on our website. Thank you.
We've got Councillors Leslie Picton and Gwilym Butler. Leslie.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just really in direct response to the request for me to follow the lead of the West Midlands. I'm a bit of a realist, I suppose, Councillor Boddington, and whilst we can all stamp our feet about the fact that the government have cut the funding, they have. So what I'm really keen about, and what I did immediately, was I've not written any letters, but I've picked up the phone to some of our local MPs and also to other council leaders, because my concern, and I'm quite happy to put this in writing, my concern is that the reduced funding will go to the usual suspects and it will go to the urban areas. So my response to them cutting that, the active travel budget, was, all right, you've done that, but when you come to give it out, don't put it in the places you always put it, because that is not going to help any of us. So I'm quite happy to put that in writing. I've already done it on the phone. That's the way I usually work, but I'm quite happy to put that in writing, but I certainly don't intend to write it in the way that you've asked me to. So thank you.
Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Chairman. I do understand the ethos of this motion, but I'm sure members in this chamber aren't going to be surprised at what I'm going to say. I cannot commit funds that I don't know where the money is coming from. And there is no point in putting a line in the budget book if I don't know if we've got any money to put the line in there in the first place. We have an alternative budget process which is coming forward, and if we may, by that time, we may have a line in the budget, but we may not, because the next financial year around the reducing our costs by 51 million is going to be a challenge. And it will be hard decisions this chamber will have to make next year when we do the budget process. So let's face it at that time. And if we haven't put a line in the book at that stage, I'm more than welcome the alternative budget process to come forward, but telling me where you're getting the money from and what you're taking away. So the door's open, but we have to be rational. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to go back to Councillor Wilson then. You reserved your right.
Thank you very much. I think Councillor Dartnell hit the nail on the head. There's a demonstration of commitment. I know Councillor Ellen said that, but I think when we all go out for our lunch in a few minutes, some of us might go and stand at Abbey Foregate and see it's been beautifully resurfaced as part of the extra funding that's going into the revenue highways maintenance budget. But what we've done at the same time is we've repainted live recycle lanes, which research has shown makes cycling more dangerous, not less. There was an opportunity out there to upgrade those facilities, which would have made that a capital scheme, which would have reduced the burden on the revenue budget. So there's one for Councillor Butler for next year. If we actually go ahead and start upgrading our facilities as capital schemes, we're saving on our revenues budget for maintaining our roads. Councillor is entirely right. It's about choices and providing the freedom of choice to people to choose the way they travel. And right now, for a lot of people in Shropshire, they can't choose the bus, can't really choose the train. Cycling for some is an option, but for many it isn't. But I think we should listen to Danny Williams, who's the CEO of Active Travel England, who says that really walking is the vast majority of active travel. I think we get very consumed by thinking that active travel is people on bikes. It's not really. It's about people walking in their local area. And Chris Whitty has said that walking for those least active is one of the best and biggest improvements to health that we can make. And if we're looking for a healthy Shropshire, a healthy population, then improving the ability of people to walk, not just their physical health, but their mental health as well. People are walking in their communities rather than locked inside metal boxes. They're talking to one another, they're seeing one another again, which after COVID is particularly important. I think all we're asking for is for pressure to be put on the government from the people of Shropshire, and we're asking for that to be done by the leader. It's up to the leader to decide the words which she uses. I think she's entirely correct to say that it seems that because of these cuts, the cuts aren't going to fall on the West Midlands Combined Authority, TfL, Transport for Greater Manchester. They're going to fall on places like this. We saw just recently that Suffolk County Council, a rural authority and one I know well because it's where I grew up, were awarded £8 million from the latest Act 12 fund. We haven't yet had ours released, but that's where we hopefully can be aiming. And I welcome Councillor Lennon saying that there is an aspiration to increase our capability level with Active Travel England. But at some point, we're going to have to start showing them what we can do on our own 2 feet and not just relying on the Active Travel Fund. It's what Suffolk did. They were already doing things. So Active Travel England had the confidence that putting money there was going to be well spent. So it would start with a place like Abbey, Foregate. It would start, we had a presentation on Monday about the amount of community infrastructure levy that is currently unallocated in Shropshire. And I think that number is about £24 million is sitting in SIL unallocated, not unspent. There's another amount that's unspent, 24 million, not even allocated to a project. And that's of the money that's been accumulated from developers since 2012. That money should be paying for crossings in Longdon or improved footpaths in Cheswardine. Wherever it happens to be, we can make people's communities better with this levy that hasn't been spent. I don't know why it's sitting there as a slush fund, but we have that money there and we need to actually start using it to make people's lives better in Shropshire. And as Councillor Boddington said, it's about the Shropshire plan. Healthy people, healthy environment, healthy economy. This fits all of those measures. And just to go back to Andy Street, the Conservative Mayor of the West Midlands, he said no other transport schemes can be delivered as quickly and as cost effectively as active travel. Active travel schemes have a cost benefit ratio of 4.7 to 32.8. Comparable road schemes, 3.1 to 5.1. So it's putting our money where it can have the biggest benefit to our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, Julia, you just put your hand up. Unfortunately, we've moved on because the debate had finished and I've brought in the seconder. I'm going to bring in now the original proposer of the motion. There was an opportunity for you to put your hand up, but it was probably 5 minutes too late that you did put it up, so apologies. Andy.
Thank you again, Chair. I'll just basically I back everything that Rob said, and you said the points I was going to make, but I'll just add a couple to it. I can understand Leslie's reasoning why she's reluctant to criticise a policy that's made. Well, not criticise, but comment on it. I saw this as doing part of what actually that she says she will do. That's to put pressure as much as we can on those that distribute funds to ensure we get some at last, because we just don't seem to get the money. That's important. Then finally, I'm a little disappointed with Willem's response because we're actually not asking council to allocate any money. That budget line could actually be zero next year. But what we've done is put a placeholder there where we can then look at it and say, look, it's zero. If it's zero, it might not be. It might be several million. Who knows? But we'll have that there. And then when the opposition parties come to do the alternative budgets, we can focus on filling up that line. I accept that we have to find the money. I mean, that's part of it. So, well, really, that's my last point. But I would commend this motion to all councillors.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, will all of those please that support the motion and its request please show. Yep, please. 26. All those against, please show. Okay, 36. So 26 for and 36 against. So that motion has fallen. Now, I'm going to look to members here to tell me what they wish to do. We have got very little left on the agenda. Councillor Buckley.
Can we have lunch, please? Because some members have medical conditions and need to.
I'm aware of that. I was going to ask if Councillor Buckley suggested a few meetings ago that if we had minimal time left, that we'd have a break. As she pointed out, some members do have medical conditions. So with Julia reinforcing that, we won't crack on. We will stop for lunch and we will please be back in this chamber. Let's say at 10 to. That gives everybody 15 minutes. Should be enough time just to hit the head, as they say. members. There haven't been any, which is quite extraordinary. But there we go. So we will move on to item 18, which is the report of the Shropshire and Wrekin Fire and Rescue Authority. I invite Councillor Nigel Hartin, who must have downed those chips in record time to be in here for this. Councillor Hartin.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, in the absence of Councillor David Menery, the Vice Chair of the Authority, I'm afraid it falls to me to propose the minutes as the Vice Chairman of Strategy and Resources at the Fire Authority. But I'll do that and ask that if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay. Councillor Kevin Harding.
It seems that the Chair of the Fire Authority has admitted the fact that the members have been given or voted for an allowance increase of 4.4%. This was a majority vote. Labour voted against, and the usual rhetoric is you don't have to accept. This is an independent organisation that's put it forward. So I'd just like to say that I've rejected that pay rise. But it should have.
But if it wasn't in the report, we didn't know that there was one for you to reject. So thank you for letting us know.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Good. Well, that's only for noting. So we will move on to item 19, which is the exclusion of the public and press. I move that in accordance with the provisions of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act of 1972 and paragraph 10.43 of the Council's Access to Information Procedure Rules, the public and press be excluded for the consideration of the remaining business.
I second.
Good. Everybody in favour, please show. I think that's unanimous for those that are in here. So we will just wait for the live streaming to stop.